You know that very specific, terrifying moment when you want to say something incredibly important, but your entire vocabulary suddenly evaporates? Your brain goes blank, and you are left staring in total panicked silence. That exact panic is the foundation of the Coke Studio Bodith track Ars Kiya. The very first line lays out the premise. Gayer jote will shair bene. Those who were cowards became poets. This is an admission of guilt. The narrator freely confesses that their baseline state is a complete emotional vacuum. They historically used to say nothing, not get they take guch. When it comes to expression, they consider themselves a coward. But romance creates a massive logistical problem. The physical and emotional weight of it builds up, and it requires an outlet. You have to speak. Yet this narrator simply lacks the natural linguistic tools to do so, which makes the context of this performance ironic. You expect explosive energy from a grand Coke studio set. Yet underneath, the lyrics desperately convey intense internal isolation. The narrator is entirely alone with their inability to articulate feelings. Ars Kiya operates effectively as a psychological study of what happens when a person who cannot speak is forced to by their own emotions. Faced with this total inability to find their own words, the narrator has to improvise a survival strategy. If they cannot invent the vocabulary of romance, they have to borrow it from history. Even the title phrase, Ars Kiya, carries an immense linguistic weight. In traditional poetry, it operates as a formal demand for an audience to listen. The narrator is stepping completely out of their quiet hesitation and donning the heavy robes of tradition. They reach straight for the classical toolkit of Urdu poetry, the established metaphors and structures of the ghazal that have reliably communicated complex emotions for centuries. They even explicitly name-drop the legendary poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz. The lyric Ishq mein tere hai Faiz bane is the narrator literally summoning past literary masters to step in and do the speaking for them. But there is a serious internal conflict happening here. They confess a desperate desire to read something entirely original, Jaakar kuch naya main padhun. That attempt fails completely. The emotional pressure is too high, and they immediately surrender to the oldest, most reliable cliches available, comparing the lover to a rose, a gulab, and calling themselves a slave, a gulam. They recognize their own defeat. By singing Shayar ki fitrat mein hi dubna, they accept that fighting the emotional storm is useless. The only way out is to stop fighting and simply let themselves drown into this borrowed artistic persona. Total emotional vulnerability leaves no room for the ego of originality. Sometimes the feeling is so overwhelming that you have to lean entirely on the proven ancient words of your ancestors just to survive the act of confessing it. The transformation is now complete. The cowardly silence is broken, and the protagonist has successfully adopted the loud, expressive mantle of the shayer, the poet. Logically, this builds a clear expectation. You find your voice, you step into the light, and you prepare to perform for the world. You expect an audience that matches the scale of the stage, a grand gathering, a massive public mehfil, where the newly forged poet can finally be heard by everyone. Then the lyric drops, Main bas shayer bana, sirf tu sunne aaye to. I only become a poet if you come to listen. That massive public stage immediately shrinks down to the size of a single room. The reality of the performance is intensely private and insular. This entire agonizing journey from a mute coward to an articulate poet was never driven by artistic ambition. The narrator is not chasing the adoration of a crowd. The grandeur of the gathering, the mehfil itself, is completely irrelevant if that one specific person is not sitting in the room. The song shifts the entire value of the art being performed. The worth of the poetry is no longer measured by the size of the audience, but entirely by the identity of the audience. Love forces the silent to finally find their voice, and then hyper-focuses every single word of it onto an audience of exactly one.